I can still see his face when I said the words. I, Omega Sarah of the Moonstone Pack, reject you, Alpha King Theron, as my mate. His expression didn't crumble. He didn't rage or plead. That almost would have been easier. Instead, something shuddered behind his eyes, like a door closing softly but permanently. His jaw tightened just slightly, and he nodded once, a single, almost imperceptible acknowledgement that I'd made my choice. And then he walked away. Before we dive deeper into the story, please tell me your name, the city you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thank you for hitting that subscribe button and comment below your thoughts. The pack was in chaos. Rejections happen, sure, but not like this. Not an Omega rejecting an Alpha. Not a packmate rejecting the king. It was unprecedented, scandalous, the kind of thing that would be whispered about for generations. Tell me, have you ever rejected something or someone you thought you didn't need, only to realize later it was exactly what you needed? Have you ever been so convinced you were right that you couldn't see the truth standing right in front of you, waiting for you to just open your eyes? Weeks passed, then months. I threw myself into my work, into my studies, into anything that would keep my mind occupied. I told myself I was happy. I told myself I'd made the right choice. Freedom felt good. I insisted to myself, even as my wolf whined softly in the back of my mind, restless and unfulfilled. Then I found out something I wasn't ready for. Something that shook me to my core, that pulled the ground right out from under my feet and left me falling, falling, falling. It's in my bloodline. My family's bloodline. A secret kept from me, hidden until it was too late to matter, too late to change what I'd already done. That I am destined to marry an Alpha from our pack. Him. The very man I rejected. My grandmother told me. She sat me down in her small cottage that smelled of herbs and old books, her weathered hands trembling slightly as she poured tea neither of us would drink. Child, she said, her voice heavy with centuries of pack history, there are some bonds that go deeper than choice. Some destinies that cannot be undone. She told me about our lineage, about the first Omega in our bloodline who saved the pack by binding herself to the Alpha King of her time. She told me about the magic in our blood, ancient and unbreakable, that calls to the Alpha bloodline in every generation. She told me about duty, about sacrifice, about the price our family pays to keep the pack strong. I wasn't prepared for this. How could I be? No one told me love had rules, not just social rules or pack hierarchy, but magical laws written into my very DNA. No one told me fate had a plan, and that plan didn't care what I wanted or what I thought I deserved. And now, I had to pay the price. But here's what really broke me, what sent cracks spiderwebbing through my carefully constructed walls of defiance and pride. The worst part? He already moved on. He found someone else. Someone he thought he could marry, someone he loved. Her name was Alara. She was beautiful. Aren't they always beautiful in these stories? But it wasn't just her beauty. She was kind, genuinely kind in a way that made you want to hate her, but couldn't. She was an Alpha's daughter from a neighboring pack, sophisticated and graceful, with none of my rough edges or stubborn pride. She fit into his world seamlessly, like she was born for it. And he looked at her the way I'd wanted someone to look at me, like she was his choice, not his obligation. Like she was his future, freely given, not magically mandated. Can you imagine that feeling? You made your bed, rejected your fate, and now you have to watch him fall in love with someone else? It's like drowning in slow motion, where every breath becomes harder than the last, where you can see the surface but can't quite reach it. What would you do? Could you walk away from him, knowing he was never really yours? Could you stand on the sidelines and watch someone else live the life you threw away? Could you smile and pretend your heart wasn't shattering into pieces too small to ever put back together? I tried. I really tried. It was the mating ceremony. Not mine, of course. His. Theirs. The whole pack gathered in the ceremonial grounds, the ancient stones arranged in circles that had witnessed countless matings over hundreds of years. The air was thick with tension, with magic, with the weight of tradition and destiny. The moon hung full and bright overhead, bathing everything in silver light that made the scene feel both beautiful and surreal. And there he was. My alpha. Well, not mine anymore. Never really mine, I suppose, since I'd rejected that claim. But my wolf didn't understand that distinction. She howled inside me, a sound of pure anguish that only I could hear, clawing at my chest, begging me to do something, anything, to stop what was about to happen. He stood at the center of the circle, looking every inch the king he was born to be. He wore the traditional ceremonial robes, deep blue embroidered with silver thread that caught the moonlight. His dark hair was pulled back, revealing the strong lines of his face, that jaw I'd watched clench when I rejected him. And beside him, radiant in white and gold, was Alara. The ceremony began. The elder spoke the ancient words, the ones about destiny and duty, about the strength of the pack bonds, about the sacred union of Alpha and, well, she wasn't an Omega, but that didn't seem to matter anymore. He'd found a loophole, a way around the bond that connected us whether I wanted it or not. Kissing her. The woman he was supposed to marry. That's when it happened. The moment the elder pronounced them bound, Theron turned to Alara, cupped her face gently in his hands, and kissed her. It should have been a moment of celebration, of joy. The pack erupted in cheers and howls of approval. But I had to watch them. Watch him kiss her while I sat there, heartbreaking, helpless. Every second felt like an eternity. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't look away, even though every instinct screamed at me to run, to flee, to get as far away from this pain as possible. I had made my choice. I had pushed him away, and now I had to pay the price. Have you ever felt that helpless? Watching someone you love slip away? And knowing, deep down, that you only have yourself to blame? It's a special kind of torture, the kind that doesn't break you all at once but chips away at you, piece by piece, until you don't recognize what's left. The thing is, I hadn't realized I loved him until that moment. How twisted is that? I rejected him because I didn't feel the bond, didn't feel that instant, all-consuming connection everyone promised. But love, real love, doesn't always announce itself with fireworks and fairy dust. Sometimes it creeps up on you slowly, quietly, until suddenly you're watching the man you love kiss someone else, and your whole world is ending. The ceremony continued. They exchanged vows, personal ones that made the crowd sigh with appreciation. Alara's voice was soft but steady as she promised to stand by his side, to support his reign, to be the partner he deserved. And Theron, his voice was deeper than I remembered, rougher around the edges as if the words cost him something. I vow to protect you, he said, looking into Alara's eyes with an intensity that made my stomach twist. To cherish you, to give you the choice and freedom you deserve in this union. Choice. Freedom. The very things I demanded, and he'd been willing to give her instead. But then, just for a moment, his eyes flickered to where I sat in the crowd. Our gazes locked, and I saw something there. Pain? Regret? Accusation? It was gone so quickly I might have imagined it, but my wolf surged forward, recognizing something my human mind refused to accept. The bond was still there. Dormant maybe, rejected, but not broken. It pulsed between us like a living thing, angry at being denied, refusing to die quietly. That was the moment I realized. It wasn't about me anymore. It wasn't about rejection, or love, or freedom. It was about duty to my bloodline, duty to my pack, duty to the mate bond that was already formed between us, whether I acknowledged it or not. Even though he loved someone else, the bond was still there. I could feel it now, where before I'd been blind to it, too caught up in my own ideas of what love should be to recognize what it actually was. The bond felt like a thread connecting us, invisible but unbreakable, thrumming with energy that grew stronger the longer I acknowledged its existence. It was in the way my heart beat faster when he was near, the way my skin prickled with awareness of his presence, even in a crowded room. It was in the way my wolf called to his, an instinctive, primal recognition that transcended reason or choice. I left the ceremony before it ended, before I had to watch them celebrate, before I had to paste on a smile and offer my congratulations like a good little packmate. I walked into the forest, letting the trees swallow me, their shadows a welcome respite from the moonlight that had witnessed my humiliation. I had to do what I never thought I would. I had to go back to him. But not as the woman who rejected him. No, I was going to pay the price for what I had done. I sat beneath an ancient oak tree, its roots older than our pack's history, and I let myself break. I cried like I'd never allowed myself to cry, great, heaving sobs that shook my whole body. I cried for the love I'd thrown away, for the future I destroyed with my pride, for the pain I'd caused both of us with my stubborn insistence on choosing my own path. And somewhere in the midst of that breakdown, in the deepest, darkest part of my despair, I found clarity. I whispered to myself, to the moon, to the universe that had orchestrated this cosmic joke, I will pay the price to love you, my mate. And that, in that moment, became my vow. Not a vow made before the pack with ceremony and celebration. Not a vow witnessed by elders and bound by tradition. But a vow made in solitude, in pain, in the kind of desperate honesty that only comes when you've lost everything and have nothing left to lose. Even if it breaks me. Even if he never loves me back. Even if I have to watch him build a life with someone else while I stand in the shadows, bound to him by magic and blood, but never by choice or heart. But here's the kicker, the thing that made this whole situation even more complicated, even more impossible. The Alpha already knew. About the bloodline. About the bond. About the fact that his ceremony with Alara, beautiful and moving as it was, couldn't actually break the magical connection between us. His heart already belonged to another. He'd given it freely, chosen to love Alara when I'd refused his predetermined affection. But the mate bond doesn't care about where you give your heart. It exists independent of feelings, of choices, of human complications. Can you understand how that felt? To know that he knew, that he'd gone through with the ceremony anyway, that he'd chosen someone else even while being magically bound to me? It was like being told you were essential but unwanted, necessary but undesired. But did that stop him from being bound to me? No. Can you escape destiny? Can you run from something that's meant to be? I couldn't. And apparently, neither could he, no matter how hard we both tried. The days after the ceremony were torture. The pack was celebrating, feasts and gatherings to honor the new union, to welcome Alara as their Alpha's chosen mate. I stayed away as much as I could, buried myself in work at the pack's healing center where I'd been training as a healer. But small packs don't allow for much distance. I'd see them together, at pack meetings, at communal dinners, walking through the village square. And every time, it was like being stabbed fresh, the wound never quite healing before it was opened again. Alara was kind to me. That made it worse somehow. She'd smile and wave, include me in conversations, completely unaware that I was the ghost at her feast, the complication she didn't know existed. How could I hate her when she'd done nothing wrong? She was just a woman who'd fallen in love with a man who seemed available, who seemed to have chosen her freely. But I couldn't escape the knowledge that my grandmother had given me, the truth that pulsed through my veins with every heartbeat. I was the Alpha King's true mate, bound by bloodline magic that predated pack law and personal choice. And sooner or later, that truth would demand its due. I started having dreams. Vivid, intense dreams where the mate bond manifested as a golden cord connecting my heart to his, stretching but never breaking no matter how far apart we moved. In these dreams, I could feel what he felt, confusion, desire, a love that was real but complicated by the persistent tug of a bond he couldn't completely ignore. I'd wake up gasping, my wolf pacing anxiously, wanting to run to him, to claim what was ours, to hell with pride or propriety or the pain it would cause everyone involved. One night, about 2 weeks after his ceremony, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know if he felt it too, if the bond was as undeniable for him as it had become for me. I waited until late, until the village was quiet and sleeping, and I made my way to the Alpha's residence. Have you ever done something you knew was wrong but couldn't stop yourself? Have you ever been driven by a need so fundamental that it overrode every rational thought, every social constraint? I stood outside his window like some lovesick fool, my heart hammering so loudly I was sure the whole pack could hear it. The light was still on, casting shadows on the curtains. I could sense him inside, could feel his presence through the bond that grew stronger with each passing day. And then the window opened, and there he was. "I wondered when you'd come," he said, his voice low and rough with something that might have been exhaustion or resignation or both. I froze, caught like a deer in headlight, every excuse I'd prepared dying on my tongue. He didn't look angry. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes and a tension in his shoulders that spoke of sleepless nights and heavy burdens. "You knew I was here," I managed to say. "I always know when you're near." He said it matter-of-factly, like he was commenting on the weather, not revealing something that turned my whole understanding of the situation on its head. "The bond, it's gotten stronger, hasn't it? Since you stopped fighting it." I wanted to deny it, to protect myself with lies and pride like I had before. But I was so tired of lying, of pretending, of carrying this weight alone. "Yes," I whispered. He climbed out the window. The Alpha King, climbing out his own window like a teenager sneaking out, and somehow that made him more real, more human than he'd ever seemed before. He gestured to the garden, away from the house where Alara presumably slept, unaware that her mate and his true mate were about to have a conversation that could shatter everything. We walked in silence to a secluded spot, a bench beneath a willow tree where the moonlight filtered through the branches in patterns that shifted with the wind. When we sat, careful to maintain distance between us, the bond seemed to thrum with approval at our proximity. "Why did you reject me, Sarah?" The question was asked gently, without accusation, but it struck like a physical blow nonetheless. Have you ever had to explain a decision you regretted to the person you'd hurt most? Have you ever had to articulate reasoning that seemed sound at the time but now felt hollow and foolish? I was scared. I admit it, the words tumbling out now that I'd started. Everyone talked about the bond like it was this overwhelming, consuming thing. Like you take one look at your mate and lose yourself completely. And I didn't feel that. I looked at you, and I saw the Alpha King, this powerful, intimidating figure, and I felt nothing but pressure. Pressure to be something I wasn't, to fit a role I hadn't chosen, to give up every dream I had for myself. He was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working as he processed this. "And now I understand that the bond isn't meant to consume you. It's meant to complete you. And I threw away the one person who was literally designed to fit with me, to complement my weaknesses and appreciate my strengths." I laughed, bitter and broken. "Ironic, isn't it? I rejected you for not feeling enough, and now I feel too much, and it's too late." "It's not too late." His voice was barely a whisper. My head snapped up, hope flaring so painfully bright I had to close my eyes against it. "You married Alara." I bound myself to her in a ceremony, yes. But Sarah? He turned to face me fully, and in the moonlight, I could see the conflict written across his features. "You and I both know that ceremony, beautiful as it was, can't override the magic in our blood. Can't break a bond that was forged before we were born. But you love her." It wasn't a question. I'd seen it, seen the way he looked at her, the tenderness in his touch. "I care for her deeply," he corrected. "She's everything you said you wanted, a choice made freely, a love built on compatibility rather than cosmic decree. I thought I could make it work, thought I could choose my own path too. But the bond gets stronger every day," I finished. "Yes." We sat in silence, the weight of our situation pressing down on us like a physical thing. What do you do when duty and desire war with each other? When what you want and what you need are not the same thing? When choosing one path means devastating someone innocent? "She doesn't know," I said. "About us? About the bloodline magic?" "No." His voice was heavy with guilt. "How could I tell her?" "Sorry, darling, but I'm magically bound to someone else, and no matter how much I care for you, that bond will eventually demand its due. It would destroy her." "So, what do we do?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. He stood, pacing in that restless way of his that I'd noticed during pack meetings when he was wrestling with a difficult decision. "My grandmother came to see me," he said. "The former Luna. She told me about your bloodline, about the price your family has paid for generations to keep the pack strong. She said that rejecting the bond, trying to fight it, would weaken both of us. Weaken the pack. So, we're supposed to just, what? Hurt Alara because some ancient magic says we belong together? I don't know. The words burst from him with such force that I flinched. He ran his hands through his hair, frustration radiating off him in waves. I don't know what we're supposed to do. All I know is that every day I'm with her, I feel you. Every time I kiss her, I sense your pain through the bond. Every night I lie beside her. My wolf is calling for you. The confession hung between us, raw and honest and utterly devastating. I came here tonight to tell you something, I said, finding my courage in the face of his own vulnerability. To make a vow, I suppose, though not the kind usually made between mates. He stopped pacing, turned to face me with an intensity that made my breath catch. I will pay the price to love you, my mate. The words came out steady, sure, carrying the weight of absolute truth. Even if it breaks me, even if I can only love you from a distance, even if I have to watch you build a life with someone else, even if the bond between us is never acknowledged or celebrated or acted upon, I will pay the price, because that's what my bloodline does. That's the duty I was born to carry. Have you ever loved someone so much that you were willing to suffer for them? To sacrifice your own happiness just so they could have a chance at theirs? It's not noble or romantic like the stories make it seem. It's agony, pure and simple. Theron's expression crumbled. In 2 strides, he closed the distance between us, dropping to his knees in front of where I sat on the bench. His hands reached for mine, and the moment our skin made contact, the bond flared to life with such intensity that we both gasped. Don't, he said, his voice breaking. Don't make vows of suffering and sacrifice. Don't condemn yourself to a life of pain for my sake. What choice do I have? Tears streamed down my face unchecked. You're bound to her by law and ceremony. I'm bound to you by blood and magic. Someone has to suffer in this triangle, Theron. Let it be me. I'm the one who created this mess with my rejection. I'm the one who should pay the price. This isn't your fault alone. His thumbs traced circles on my hands, and even that small touch was almost more than I could bear. Pleasure and pain so intertwined they became indistinguishable. I could have waited, could have given you time instead of moving on so quickly. But I was hurt and angry, and I wanted to prove that I didn't need the bond, that I could choose to. Did it work? I asked softly. Can you choose to love her instead of me? The silence that followed was answer enough. The next few weeks were a special kind of hell. Theron and I maintained our distance publicly, but the bond grew stronger, more insistent, until it was affecting us both physically. I lost weight, couldn't sleep, my wolf constantly on edge. I heard through the pack grapevine that he was struggling too, shorter temper, distracted during meetings, increasingly withdrawn from Alara. People were starting to notice, to whisper. I threw myself into my healing work, taking every shift I could, pushing my body to exhaustion so I might find a few hours of dreamless sleep. But even that backfired, because who showed up at the healing center one afternoon with a training injury but the Alpha King himself? It's just a minor burn, he said to our head healer, but his eyes were on me where I stood frozen across the room. Sarah can handle it. The head healer, oblivious to the undercurrents, nodded and went back to her own patient. I had no choice but to approach, to gesture him to a treatment bed, to gather the supplies I'd need with hands that trembled slightly. This is a bad idea, I muttered as I approached with the burn salve. I know, but he didn't leave. I focused on the injury, a nasty burn across his forearm that must have hurt more than he was letting on. How did this happen? Training accident. Got distracted. Our eyes met, and I knew what had distracted him. The same thing that distracted me constantly, the pull of the bond, the awareness of each other that never faded, the longing that had become a constant ache in my chest. I applied the salve as gently as I could, but even the clinical touch required for treatment felt charged with electricity. His sharp intake of breath wasn't entirely about the pain of the burn. Sarah, he said softly, this can't continue. It's tearing us both apart. I know. My hand stilled on his arm. But what's the alternative? You're bound to Alara. The pack adores her. She's been nothing but gracious and kind. We can't just. She knows something's wrong. The confession came out heavy with guilt. She's not stupid. She can sense the distance between us, even though I've tried to hide it. Last night, she asked me if I regretted choosing her. My heart clenched. What did you tell her? I lied. His free hand came up to cut my cheek, and I should have pulled away, but couldn't make myself move. I told her everything was fine, that I was just stressed about pack business. But Sarah, I can't keep lying. Not to her, not to you, not to myself. What are you saying? I whispered, even though part of me knew. Part of me had been waiting for this moment with equal parts hope and dread. I'm saying that we need to. The door burst open and Alara walked in, stopping short at the sight of us. Theron and I sprang apart like guilty teenagers, but the damage was done. She'd seen the way he was touching me, the intimacy of the moment that went far beyond healer and patient. Alara, Theron started, but she held up a hand. Don't. Her voice was quiet but firm. Don't insult me by pretending this is nothing. Have you ever been caught in a moment that changes everything? Where time seems to slow down, and you can see the exact instant that everything you've been trying to avoid crashes down around you. She looked between us, her expression cycling through hurt and confusion and finally, devastatingly, understanding. There's something between you two, she said. I've felt it for weeks but told myself I was imagining things. But I'm not, am I? It's complicated, I offered weakly. Then uncomplicate it for me. She crossed her arms, and I had to admire her strength even as my heart broke for her. Tell me the truth. Both of you. Theron and I exchanged glances. This was the moment. The truth would hurt her, but maybe the lies were hurting her more. Sarah is my true mate, Theron said finally. Bound by ancient bloodline magic that predates our pack laws. We didn't choose it. She rejected me. I moved on to you. But the bond, it can't be broken or ignored. Alara's face went pale. Your true mate?
But you married me.
You chose me. I did choose you, he said gently. I care for you deeply, Alara. But you're magically bound to her. She finished, her voice flat. She looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the moment she understood everything, my distance, my pain, the way I'd avoided them both.
And you?
You love him, even though you rejected him. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Yes. Alara left the healing center without another word. Theron went after her, leaving me alone with the mess we'd created, with the truth that was finally out but brought no relief, only more pain. I went home that night and did what I should have done from the beginning. I went to my grandmother. She was waiting for me, as if she'd known this day would come. She poured tea, sat me down, and let me pour out the whole story through tears and broken sentences. Child, she said when I'd finished, do you understand what the bloodline price truly means? Duty, I said. Sacrifice. Binding ourselves to the alpha line even when it's hard. Yes, but more than that. She took my hands in her weathered ones. It means loving selflessly. It means putting the good of the pack above our own desires. Your ancestor, who started this magical bond, didn't do it for herself. She did it because the alpha king of her time was dying, and only a bond with an omega from her bloodline could save him and, by extension, the pack. So, she sacrificed herself. She loved. My grandmother's eyes held centuries of wisdom. She chose love over ease, duty over desire, the many over the one. And every generation since has made that same choice. Your mother did it. I did it. Now it's your turn. But what does that mean practically? I asked, desperate for guidance. How do I love him when he's bound to someone else? How do I fulfill this duty without destroying Alara? That, my grandmother said softly, is the question you must answer for yourself. The price looks different for each generation. For your mother, it meant accepting that your father would never love her the way she loved him, that the bond was one-sided until the day he died. For me, it meant watching my mate love another for years before he finally acknowledged our connection. So, I just wait, suffer, hope he eventually chooses me. You love, she corrected. Without expectation. Without demand. You let the bond guide you, but not control you. You trust that fate, having brought you together, knows better than your limited perspective what's meant to happen. It wasn't the answer I wanted, but maybe it was the answer I needed. 3 days after the incident in the healing center, I was summoned to the Alpha's residence. Not by Theron, but by Alara. I almost didn't go. What could she possibly want from me except to rage at me for being the complication in her marriage? But something in the formal tone of the summons made me go, made me present myself at the grand house and follow the servant to a private sitting room where Alara waited. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept any better than I had. But she sat straight-backed and composed, every inch the Alpha's mate she'd been raised to be. "Thank you for coming," she said, gesturing to a chair across from her. I wasn't sure I should. I sat, perching on the edge of the seat, ready to flee if this turned ugly. "I've been doing research," she said without preamble. "About bloodline magic, about mate bonds, about the history of the Moonstone Pack. Did you know your family has served the Alpha line for over 20 generations?" Yes. I learned about it recently. And in all that time, there's never been a case like ours. An Omega rejecting the bond, an Alpha marrying someone else, and then the bond asserting itself anyway. She poured tea with steady hands. "We're in unprecedented territory." "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it with every fiber of my being. I never meant for any of this to happen. If I could go back, if I could undo my rejection. But you can't. It wasn't said unkindly, just factually. None of us can change the past. We can only decide what we do with the present. I waited, unsure where she was going with this. "Theron told me everything," she continued. "About the bond, about how it's affecting you both, about the duty your bloodline carries. And I've been thinking about what that means for all of us. Alara, I want you to know that I never pursued him. I stayed away. I tried to. I know." She held up a hand. "I know you've been suffering, Sarah. I may not have the bond you share, but I'm not blind. I've seen the pain in your eyes every time you looked at us. I've watched you waste away trying to honor a marriage that was built on incomplete information. This was not going how I expected. Where was the anger? The jealousy? The territorial rage that any mate would feel? I don't understand," I admitted. "I love him," she said simply. "I genuinely love Theron. But I've come to realize that what I feel, as real as it is, pales in comparison to what you two share. The bond is calling to him, Sarah. Calling louder, every day. And I can't compete with destiny." Tears pricked my eyes. "You shouldn't have to compete. You're his wife. You chose each other." "We did. But we chose without all the information. And now." She set down her teacup, met my eyes directly. "Now I have to make a different choice. I can cling to a man whose soul is bound to someone else, making all three of us miserable. Or I can let him go."
"No."
The word burst from me with surprising force. "No. You can't sacrifice your happiness because of some ancient magic. That's not fair to you. And it's fair to you? To watch the man you love build a life with me? To feel the bond tearing you apart while you try to be noble and self-sacrificing?" She shook her head.
"No, Sarah.
"That's not sustainable. Not for any of us." "What are you saying?" I asked, though I was afraid to hope, afraid to even consider what she might mean. "I'm saying that I'm going to speak to the Pack Elders. Request an annulment based on new information about bloodline obligations. It will be difficult, potentially scandalous, but it's the right thing to do. Have you ever had someone sacrifice for you, give up something precious because they saw you suffering? It's humbling and heartbreaking and guilt-inducing all at once." "I can't let you do that," I protested. "The shame, the gossip, is mine to bear," she said firmly. "I may not have the magic bond you share, but I have my dignity and my choice. And I choose not to trap a man who loves someone else." I choose not to build a life on a foundation that was cracked from the beginning. He does care for you, I said, needing her to know. It's not that he doesn't. I know. Her smile was sad but genuine. And maybe in another life, another circumstance, we could have been truly happy.
But this isn't that life.
This is the life where you two are meant to be together, and I'm meant to find my own path. After leaving Alara, I walked. I walked through the village, through the forest, to the sacred grounds where pack ceremonies were held. The full moon was rising, painting everything in silver light, and I felt the bond thrumming through me stronger than ever before. I found Theron already there, standing at the center of the ceremonial circle as if he'd been waiting for me. Maybe he had been. The bond seemed to draw us together now with an inevitability that was both frightening and right. She told you, he said as I approached. Yes. I stopped a few feet away, maintaining the distance that had become habit. Theron, we can't let her do this. Can't let her sacrifice her happiness for what? For a bond that's real and powerful and not going away. He turned to face me fully. Sarah, I've spent months trying to fight this, trying to make it work with Alara while pretending I didn't feel you in every breath I took. It's not fair to her. It's not fair to you. And it's destroying me. But the pack will understand. He took a step closer. My grandmother is meeting with the elders as we speak, explaining the bloodline magic, the duty that's been carried for generations. This isn't some sordid affair or cruel abandonment. This is fate, destiny, magic that's been woven into the foundation of our pack. Another step. We were close enough now that I could feel the heat of him, could see the conflict and desire and desperate hope in his eyes. I've made so many mistakes, I whispered. Rejected you, hurt Alara. And I've made mine, he countered. Moved on too quickly, married someone else out of hurt pride, tried to deny what was always meant to be. So what now? Asked, the question I'd been asking myself for weeks. Now, he said, reaching out to cut my face gently, giving me every opportunity to pull away. Now we stop fighting. Stop suffering. Stop paying prices for choices we made out of fear. I vowed to pay the price, I reminded him, my voice breaking. To love you even if it broke me. Then let me vow something too. His thumb traced my cheekbone, and the bond sang between us, joyful and right. I vow to love you not despite the bond, but because of it. Not because fate decreed it, but because my heart chooses it. I vow to make up for lost time, to cherish what we almost threw away, to build a life worthy of the sacrifice your bloodline has made for generations. Tears streamed down my face. That's a big vow. We're bound by big magic, he said with a small smile. Seems fitting. What about Alara? The pack? The scandal? Will be what it will be. He rested his forehead against mine, and the bond flared so brightly I gasped. I'm done putting everyone else's comfort above our truth. Done pretending I can choose someone else when my soul has already chosen you. Even though I rejected you, even though I caused all this pain. Especially because of that. His hands framed my face tenderly. You rejected me out of fear, and that fear was valid. I was asking you to give up your autonomy, your choice, your freedom for a bond you didn't understand or want. But now you're here, choosing me with full knowledge of what it means. That choice, Sarah, means everything. Have you ever had a moment where everything shifts, where the weight you've been carrying suddenly lifts and you can breathe again for the first time in months? Where fear transforms into certainty and doubt becomes conviction? I love you, I said, the words I'd been holding back finally set free. I love you, Theron. Not because the bond tells me to, but because you're patient and kind and strong enough to admit when you're wrong. Because you tried to do the right thing even when it hurt you. Because when I look at you now, I don't see the intimidating Alpha King. I see my mate, my partner, my future. The kiss, when it came, was inevitable, necessary, like the first rain after a drought or the sun rising after the longest night. The bond exploded between us, weaving and binding and healing all at once. I felt his relief and his love and his absolute certainty that this finally, was right. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the moon was directly overhead, bathing us in silver light. What now? I asked again, but this time the question held hope instead of despair. Now, he said, taking my hand and threading our fingers together. Now we go face the pack together. Face whatever consequences come. And we do it as true mates, bound by choice and magic and love. The pack meeting was intense. There was shock, yes. Confusion. Some anger. Mostly from those who'd grown fond of Alara. But there was also understanding, especially from the older generation who remembered the stories of bloodline duty and ancient bonds. Alara stood before the pack with grace and dignity, explaining her decision to request an annulment. She spoke of the bloodline magic with respect, of Theron and me with kindness, and of her own need to find a mate who could love her without reservation. The pack elders, after much deliberation, granted the annulment. It was unprecedented in recent history, but not unheard of in the old stories. The bloodline magic was recognized, honored even, as part of the pack's foundation. But there was a price. There's always a price. I was required to undergo a ceremony, an ancient ritual that would formally bind me to the Alpha bloodline in the way my ancestors had been bound. It was painful, 3 days and nights of fasting and meditation, of opening myself fully to the bond and the duty it carried. I had visions of my grandmother, my mother, all the women who'd carried this burden before me, and I understood finally what they'd sacrificed. They'd given up the illusion of choice, the comfort of ordinary love, the ease of a simple life. But in return, they'd gained something profound, a connection so deep it transcended life itself, a purpose larger than themselves, a love that was destiny made manifest. When I emerged from the ceremony, weak but transformed, Theron was waiting. We were bound that very night under the full moon, with the whole pack as witnesses. This time, when he kissed me, there was no pain, no regret, no shadows of what might have been. There was only us, finally together, finally right. That was 3 months ago. 3 months of learning to live with the bond fully acknowledged, of building a relationship that was both predetermined and chosen. It hasn't been easy. There are still whispers, still those who think Alara got a raw deal, still moments when I doubt myself and wonder if I'm truly worthy of this role. But then Theron will look at me across a crowded room, and the bond will pulse with love and certainty, and I remember that some prices are worth paying. Some sacrifices lead to joy. Some destinies, no matter how long you run from them, will always find you in the end. Alara has left the pack, gone to visit distant relatives while she heals and decides her next steps. She writes occasionally, always kind, always gracious, and I reply with gratitude and apologies that she insists aren't necessary. She's stronger than anyone gave her credit for, and I hope she finds a love that's entirely her own, unchained by magic or duty. As for me and Theron, we're learning. Learning to lead together, to love fully, to honor both the bond and the choice we've made to embrace it. Learning that destiny doesn't mean you have no say in your future. It means your future has a foundation, a starting point, but you still have to build the life on top of it.
My grandmother was right.
The price looks different for everyone. For my ancestors, it was sacrifice and suffering. For me, it was learning to let go of pride and fear. For Alara, it was releasing someone she loved so he could be with someone he was bonded to. But here's what I've come to understand about prices and sacrifices and duty. Sometimes paying the price isn't about suffering. Sometimes it's about accepting. Accepting that you're not in control of everything, that some things are bigger than you, that being part of something ancient and magical means giving up certainty for faith. I will pay the price to love you, my mate. I made that vow in my darkest moment, thinking it meant a lifetime of pain and longing. But the price I'm actually paying is the price of transformation, of becoming someone who can love without reservation, who can lead with strength tempered by humility, who can honor duty while still maintaining choice. And you know what? It's a price I'd pay again. Every time. In every life. So here I am, the Omega who rejected her Alpha King, and then fought to win him back. The woman who watched her mate marry someone else and had to find the strength to love him anyway. The heir to a bloodline that's paid the price of duty for 20 generations. Our story isn't over.
Not yet.
There will be more challenges, more prices to pay, more moments when I'll question whether I'm strong enough for this role. But I'll face them with Theron by my side, bound by magic and choice and a love that was always meant to be. But I'll leave you with the question that's been at the heart of this whole story, the question that every person must answer for themselves. What would you do? What would you sacrifice for love? For fate? For a destiny you didn't choose but can't escape? Could you watch the person you're bound to build a life with someone else and still find the strength to love them? Could you let go of someone you loved so they could be with their true mate? Could you transform your pain into purpose, your sacrifice into strength? These aren't easy questions. They don't have simple answers. But they're the questions that define us, that show us who we really are when everything we thought we knew is stripped away. I was an Omega who thought she could choose her own fate. I learned that fate and choice aren't opposites. They're partners in the dance of life. I rejected the bond and then embraced it. I caused pain and then bore it. I made mistakes and then paid for them. And in the end, I learned the most important lesson of all. Some prices are worth paying. Some destinies are worth accepting. Some loves are worth fighting for, even when the fight seems impossible. What would you do? I can't answer that for you. I can only tell you what I did, what I'm still doing every day, paying the price to love my mate, even though it transforms me, even though it demands everything I have to give. Because here's the secret they don't tell you about destiny and duty and bloodline magic. The price you pay isn't always about loss. Sometimes, the price is about gain. Gaining wisdom, gaining strength, gaining a love so deep and true that it makes every sacrifice worthwhile. So I'll ask you one last time. What would you sacrifice for love? For a connection that transcends choice and logic and ordinary affection? For a bond that's written in your very blood? Think about it. Really think about it. Because you never know when fate might come calling, when you might be faced with your own impossible choice, when you might have to decide what price you're willing to pay. And when that moment comes, I hope my story, with all its mistakes and pain and ultimate joy, gives you the strength to pay whatever price your own destiny demands. Because in the end, the price of love, real love, the kind that's worth having, it's everything. And it's worth it. Every time. Now, I need you to please subscribe to my channel as part of your great support and encouragement towards the growth of this community.